Hi, I'm Rocky Raccoon, and we have a new guest with us today. But first I have a disclaimer. This video is not affiliated with any alcoholic recovery program. No part of this ensuing conversation is to be construed as professional advice. And finally, my guest this evening is not an actor, he is an alcoholic. Please welcome my guest, Roger.
Hi, Rocky.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Am I an Alcoholic? Roger, I have been told that drinking alcohol can begin at any age from childhood to adulthood. Could you share with us when you first began experimenting with alcohol?
Sure, Rocky. I started at a very young age, in my single-digit years, 8, 9. My parents would have parties, and in the morning they'd all be asleep, and I'd drink the drinks that were left from the night before. And in the neighborhood I grew up in, lots of kids started drinking at a very early age. So I progressed in my alcoholism at ages 11, 12, 13. By age 14, I was a full-blown alcoholic. I was drinking fifths of cheap Canadian whiskey like Seagram 7, and I can't remember what I had yesterday for breakfast, but I remember the brands of the fifths of whiskey that I was drinking at 14. My drinking was so bad at such a young age that I first got sober in 1967 when I was 14 years old. I stayed sober for 2.5 years back then, and I needed to. I was a full-blown alcoholic. Unfortunately, after that 2.5 years of not drinking, I went back in May of 1970, and my current sobriety date is November 6th of 1991. And for those 24 years between when I stopped in 1967 and when I finally got sober in 1991, I had many horrible alcoholic episodes, and 4 times I was able to stop drinking for over a year. And my belief is nobody tries that hard to control something that isn't already completely out of control.
In earlier episodes of this program, people have shared how alcohol has had profound effects on their life. Alcohol changed the behavior, and in some cases, it had become devastating. What can you share about how alcohol has affected your life?
Well, I got to tell you, Rocky, I did some horrible things under the influence of alcohol. I was a fairly moral person growing up. I didn't lie, cheat, or steal. But under the effects of alcohol, I did those things. I said things I wished I hadn't said. I hurt people who loved me. I did things that I regretted. But alcohol drove me to do things that I wouldn't have done had I not been drinking. So it ended up ruining a marriage. That divorce and the breakup of my family in 1991 was what drove me to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was aware I was an alcoholic. I knew I needed help, but I fought for my right to continue to drink and use other substances until I finally reached a bottom. And for me, a bottom was a point at which there was something more important in my life than that next drink or other substance. And when I reached that bottom, I had a moment of grace. An EAP, an employee assistance professional, recommended I go to AA, and I finally accepted that was the pathway I needed to follow, and I will be eternally grateful that that person directed me towards Alcoholics Anonymous.
I read a few stories written by recovering alcoholics in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. In them, I found that there was a defining moment when the alcoholic realized their life had become unmanageable and they needed to seek help. Did you have such a defining moment in your life?
Yes, I did, Rocky. It was driving to see that EAP, that professional, and I prayed, although at that time I considered myself probably agnostic or atheistic. I prayed to a God I didn't understand to please help me. I wanted desperately to save my marriage and my children, and I didn't want to leave my home. All those things eventually happened, but I got sober. And for that moment of grace, when I turned to Alcoholics Anonymous and I accepted that my life was unmanageable and I was powerless over my own alcoholism, from that moment to today, I've not had a drink or a drug. And for that, I am eternally grateful.
You mentioned that you have been involved with AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous program, for many years. What is your takeaway from your association with AA?
Well, I got to tell you, Rocky, AA has a different way of doing things. All my life, the way I had tried to solve my problems was just to try harder and to bombard all my problems with my self-will. And I thought, because of other things in my life I had accomplished, I would also be able to overcome my drinking. But I was unable to. And in AA, they told me I needed to surrender. I needed to give up and to stop fighting and to ask a power greater than myself, a higher power, which today I choose to call God, to help me. And that instead of using my willpower, what I needed to do was surrender and give up, accept my powerlessness. And that is interestingly powerful. When you accept that you're powerless over alcohol, there are things that you can do. You know, when I focused on my life, then I was able to stay away from a drink, and we do this a day at a time. So I'm eternally grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for showing me a way of living that I wouldn't have known otherwise. I follow the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps and 12 traditions. I'm a garden variety drunk who needed a garden variety solution. And I believe that the only solution to my alcoholism was a vital spiritual experience that I got from working the 12 steps of AA.
Thank you, Roger, and I look forward to continuing our conversation in episode 6.
Rocky, it's been a pleasure to share with you my road to recovery from alcoholism. Thank you very much.